Hi, I'm Jules.
I'm Rufus.
And this is the Molliebird. Together we've developed the Molliebird to use in schools. So we were just talking about where it all started, and really it began with a discussion about children misunderstanding things at school.
Yeah, quite simply the idea that there are issues that we sometimes skim over because we don't realise that the children haven't quite grasped something.
And those misconceptions can stay hidden, can't they, right through, and they carry on their misconceptions right into secondary school if it never comes out in the classroom. So the misconception that we're tackling with the Molliebird is the idea that evolution happens really quickly. Children think it can happen in one generation, and the misconception that you can choose to change. They believed that the brown bears went north in search of food and they kind of went and turned into polar bears. So that we were looking to tackle that misconception in principle. We decided we would try and put them into a story that would then allow the teacher to bring out those misconceptions through discussion.
So both Jules and we're both quite passionate about stories and storytelling. So for us, it was just a natural sort of line to go into using stories to maybe approach this idea of misconceptions. And
Absolutely.
We didn't just want textbooks
No.
which were telling science through pictures and being sold as a picture book. We wanted an actual story at the heart of it,
Yeah.
and then the science kind of hidden away within it, and that's
Absolutely.
why stories was important for us.
Yeah, because our brains, we're hardwired to learn through stories. Our brains give psychological privilege to anything that comes in story form because they're looking all the time for cause and effect, they're looking for conflict, and they're looking for characters. And, you know, children are human and they interact with the stories and they get emotionally involved with them. And they don't need to know the science to start reading it, but the science comes through the story. So as they're reading the story and engaging with it on an emotional level, they're learning the science that's within it.
A picture book is often a short, sharp text that has all that emotion, has all that feeling in it,
Yeah.
and it can be done within a lesson.
So the way to use the Molliebird in the classroom is to start by teaching inheritance. You need to understand inheritance before you can teach the book. Then you just read it. You read it for the joy of reading a story, and you discuss it like you would any other class text.
High in a canopy, close to the sky, surrounded by creepers and tropical plants. There was nothing to fear, they were hidden up there. Not even the beady-eyed snake stood a chance. But there is a monster that all creatures dread, ferociously hot.
On the second time of reading, we supply some questions in our teacher's manual. Things like, how long do you think it took for the forest to change from this to this, so the beginning to the end, and the birds to change? And children will often discuss it and say, oh, I think it's about a year because trees grow quite fast, or, you know, I can see the plants have grown. How long does Grace's table think, and why?
2 years and a half, because it will take a couple of years to grow the forest back, and then it will take like a couple of weeks or days to get the babies and then get loads of babies.
Right.
20 to 30 years, because it would take about a year for each, we're not sure how long, but we think about a year for each set to happen. But then there's going to be lots of sets, and it's going to take a few years, and then it's going to...
But actually it's taken a lot longer for those generations of bluebirds to come about, and so they get into discussion with their group about how long it does take for baby birds to be born, and so on. So that's one of the questions. Another question might be, what do you think she's thinking at this point? Why is she painting herself brown? What's she hoping to achieve, and is it going to work? And by discussing those two questions, you can find out whether children think you can change your what your babies are going to look like by painting yourself or not, and then that shows you whether or not they've grasped the idea of inheritance and whether evolution is something you can decide to do.
Because when he was in the egg, the mum put him in the mud I don't think she chose to do it. It wasn't deliberate because like it's just natural.
So how did it happen then? So I love your idea. Keep going.
Because the male like had some grey patches on him.
Okay.
And that's probably why she had a grey baby.
And as we know as teachers, you can teach this to one year group and they get it on a whole different level to another year group, depending on what's been in the news or just levels of maturity as well. And I think you're right about the key areas to start with is to read it and read it as a story and keep that as sort of like the beginning point. Everything that comes from that is your bonus, and the science will come from that and it will be led from that story. But the story is key.
Yeah, so you need to read it uninterrupted to start with, and then go back and read it again and get those questions out, and then listen for their misconceptions. And rather than leap in and go, no, that's not right, let me tell you why, let the children discuss it, let them get through that dialogic talk where they've got half-formed ideas, throwing them about the classroom and coming to an agreement together. Because often there's one child that will say, oh no, she's definitely chosen to have brown babies and that's going to happen by painting herself brown, and the other child's going, no, you can't get that, bluebirds have blue babies. And then they come to those discoveries really themselves, and that's what you really want to do. You want to be a sort of a friendly onlooker and being interested with them rather than the expert in the room.
Which is another reason why a picture book is so powerful, again, because you can read it several times, you can refer back to it, you can flick through it quickly. You are using visual cues and clues to pick up on the section you want to talk about, or the section that might provide you with evidence to back up your argument.
Yeah. Because this isn't a one shop for the whole of evolution. This is a way of teaching natural selection, and most children we've taught using this do get a lot out of it, and they get most of the ideas about natural selection from the Molliebird. But you do need to go on then and show how natural selection, the survival of the fittest, is the way in which evolution happens. It's the mechanism, and then look at evolution of other species. If you hold that up, that is the
from
evolution.
dinosaurs to the Molliebird at the end.
So the Molliebird's been written to help your class discuss their misconceptions, to get it out in the open, and we really hope that it's useful for you in your teaching.
And I think what we'd like to see is, like all good classroom resources, it's not one that just gives the answer. It's one where we actually have to work for that answer, and learning is key, and making mistakes is key, and that ownership. I always want to see that ownership in my classroom when children are learning, and hopefully that's what this sort of text does.